Well, welcome to another podcast of Never Mind the Chaos. My name is Leonard Simpson, partner with 2020 Financial Advisors, and joined by my co-host, Michael Chastain of Chastain Jones Law. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. We have a very windy day out here.
That's good. Well, I guess that could be detrimental to or impact cycling, right? If you were to go out
Uh,
on the
yeah, it's been here in New Mexico. So I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and during the spring we get just crazy wind. And yeah, there's some days that you just really don't want to go outside and ride because you'll just get blown over.
Absolutely. Well, it's our pleasure today to have as our guest Kelsey DePaoli of Black and DePaoli Law. And we're going to spend the next 45 minutes just learning about Kelsey. How are you, Kelsey?
I'm great. Thanks for having me this morning. And I'm glad you're not getting blown over there, Mike.
That,
Yeah,
that,
this is the time of year that we have to start planting, and we have 10 acres here, so we have to start doing some planting and yard work, and sometimes it's just really hard to do when dust is blown everywhere. It's an interesting place to live for sure.
yeah, no, but a beautiful part of the country.
Yeah, we love it here.
Quite different than California. So, Kelsey, tell us about you. I know we spoke uh, last week, and you shared with me something about your family, your young kids, and challenges as would be expected with working couple and raising young kids and the challenges of running a practice. So, are you a native Californian?
Born and raised in California. Yes, yes, yes. Very, very northern California. I was raised in Humboldt County, so
County.
far north as you can get before you're in Oregon.
Yeah, that's way up there.
Yep.
And uh, now, did you come out of a large family?
Well, my immediate family is just my parents, my brother, and I, but many, many cousins, many, many aunts and uncles. So yes, a very large extended family. So we call them our tribe. So holidays are chaos. Speaking of chaos, holidays are chaos, and many family events are chaos, but couldn't do without them.
So, are they still back in Humboldt County?
My brother still lives in Humboldt County, with his kiddos, and many of my cousins live up there, and some of my aunts and uncles, a lot of my friends. It's a small community. I was raised in a small town, so very close-knit group. So I was lucky that I was kind of born with friends. Like my mom and her best friends all had children at the same time. We all lived on the same street. Many of us did. And so I was kind of, I had best friends from the day I was born, and we all still are very close. So it's neat. I don't go up there as much as I used to because it's such a drive, but I still go up there a few times a year, and many of them come down and visit here, and yeah, stay in touch.
That's really special. And
Yeah,
I thought we discussed where you went to college. Did you go to Chico?
I did.
That's right.
Yes.
We talked about that because we talked about,
Yeah.
and Mike can relate to this because actually I met Mike in our local cycling group. So I'm also a cyclist, and that's from Mike. No, Mike, no, we didn't meet there. I'm sorry. I invited you into the group. If I'm
Yes, you
not,
did.
yeah. And I think Kelsey, you and I talked about the Century bike ride that I rode in a few times up there, Chico Wildflower. So
Yeah.
I don't know if Mike, if you ever had a chance to do that. So when you were growing up, tell us about that part of your life and what took you in the direction to ultimately go to law school.
Yeah, it's funny because I think over the years, once I became an attorney, I guess, the question of, why that career choice. When I was younger and growing up, I didn't have any attorneys in my family. I wasn't surrounded by attorneys. It wasn't even I guess, a thought or a topic. So growing up, I think I changed my mind every other week of what I thought I was maybe going to do. But from very, very early on, I knew that I wanted to help people in some capacity. I knew that I wanted to be a voice for people. I worked with children a lot. Um, I think I thought I was going to be a nurse. I wanted to be a detective. I wanted to be all kinds of things. But I didn't have, my mom was very much just like, sh how should I say this? I love you, Mom, but she pushed like, you're going to go to college and you're going to do the thing. You're not going to stay in Humboldt County, and you're going to move away and you're going to go see what is out there. And if you want to come back home, you can come back home, but you're going to go away. Like, she very much pushed me to get out of the home and leave, which was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. And I thank her daily for that. But I think when I went off to college, I had really no idea. I think I was just ready to explore life and, have some fun. Chico State, come on. Um, and then ultimately, I started just taking some classes, and I started a few like prereqs for nursing. Immediately realized it was not for me. I don't do smells. I I walked into the human anatomy class and I was like, no, this is not gonna, no, I'm not gonna do this. It's not gonna go well. So then I started taking political science classes, and I was like, yep, I'm gonna be a detective. But then there was still that, wait a minute, you're still gonna deal with smells. So very sensitive, okay? I don't know what it is, but I can smell things from miles away, and I'm very sensitive to smell. I don't know. It's bizarre, but so I knew that that wasn't going to be my thing. And ultimately, I ended up in a civil rights and civil liberties class. And my teacher, my professor, was an attorney in Chico. And I just really liked him. He was a really cool guy. He had a really good personality, was very smart. I liked how he could kind of think, like he would like have an idea and then have you really like dive into like, what about the other perspective of that, and like just really analyzing certain things. I just really liked him. And he kind of brought it up to me one day, like, how have you ever thought of law school? And I'm like, no, can't afford law school. That's bananas. But I took the LSAT and somehow got into law school. I don't know. I just kind of I randomly ended up there, but I think it's where I belong for sure.
You took a degree in criminal justice, I believe, correct?
Yeah, yeah. My major was criminal justice. Mhm.
And
So
and
did you where did you go right after law school? I mean, did you work for another firm, or did you open up your own shop right away? How did that progress?
Well, in law school, I did quite a few different internships and kind of trying to find where I felt I could really, I knew from a very early stage of life and even while in law school that I wanted to help people without a voice. I had this yearning feeling of yes, I want to learn about the law and justice and all of the things that come along with taking classes in law school, but I just knew I wanted to serve a population that couldn't stand up for themselves, that was taken advantage of. So I did a lot of internships, worked at the DA's office very briefly in the misdemeanor department. It wasn't for me. I knew that really early on in that internship. I worked in a pro per clinic in family law, helping people that couldn't afford attorneys in family law. And I liked that, but it wasn't my vibe. It felt helpful, but it just wasn't going to be my thing. And I worked at a few other places. I mean, the list goes on. I think I did like 6 or 7 little internships here and there. But ultimately, I started initially working for Placer County Dependency Court. So I had been a CASA previously, which is a court-appointed special advocate for children. So when children are taken out of their homes by CPS, and they're put in the system, I was part of this program where you're basically the voice for children. And I knew immediately that that felt like my soul was happy. Like, this is what I should be doing. I'm helping these kids that many of them, some babies, right? They couldn't speak at all. So they really had the no voice. And then young children that wouldn't be able to articulate where they, what they were struggling with and what they were going through in their life. And so I was a CASA, and then ultimately I got appointed as kind of an overflow attorney for dependency court, where I was appointed my cases. So I didn't get to choose them, but I would represent some of the parents, and then I would represent some of the children that were going through a really terrible time. So I did dependency court basically right after, I think shortly after I was licensed. And I did that for quite some time. But I was also bartending at the time at a restaurant in Folsom. So I was working during the day up in Placer County, and I had a fair amount of cases. But I was working in the evenings as a bartender, and
Which
um,
was that, Kelsey?
huh?
Which which
Which
which, which bar?
Sutter Street Steakhouse.
Sutter Street Steakhouse. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes. Which there's a connection there too. All through law school, I was a bartender up in Chico at Riley's Bar in Chico, and Riley's, the owners of Riley's also own Sutter Street Steakhouse down here.
I didn't know that.
Um, yeah, so if you've never been to Sutter Street Steakhouse, you got to go. Really good food.
Well, yeah, we've been there quite a lot. So
Yeah,
was it law school that brought you down to the Sacramento area? Where did you go to law school?
I went to law school in Chico as well. Mhm.
Okay. I didn't know they had a law school. Okay, thank
Yeah, many people don't. It's very small. It's called Cal Northern. It was a night school. I, I didn't have a lot of money. I had to pay for law school on my own. So I didn't have the option to do a full board daytime law school. So I had to choose a school that would allow me to work. So I would work during the day and go to school, law school in the evening, and then bartend at night in Chico so that I could afford to live and be a law student and still eat. Um, so yeah, law school was in Chico. I moved down here. I had an aunt and uncle that lived down here, and I had grandparents that lived down here. And the city down here, there was a lot more opportunity. Then I wasn't going back to Humboldt. I knew that. I think my dad was sad about that, but I knew as soon as I left, I probably wasn't going back. And then ultimately ended up here in Sacramento, and bartending at Sutter Street. I bartended also at Folsom Lake Bowl for a very short time. um, and then started working in Placer County Dependency Court. And then the owner of the building of Sutter Street Steakhouse, or I don't know if he was the owner or what his relationship was, maybe a partner and owner of Sutter Street Steakhouse building, I knew really well, became a friend of mine. He's like, "What are you doing? Still bartending? Like, you're a lawyer." So he introduced me to Travis Black, who, and yeah, that's kind of how that started. But that's a whole story in and of itself. But
Appreciate
he's the
that.
one that introduced me to
Yeah,
Travis.
that's quite a story. Yeah.
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 So how did you wind up going from basically working with kids like that to running and owning a PI firm, a personal injury firm?
Yeah, I know. What a transition, right? Well, when I met Travis Black, I was still working for dependency court, but it wasn't a full-time job. And I did want to get away from bartending, and I wanted to use my bar card and actually practice law. And dependency court gave me an amazing opportunity. You were in court all the time, right? And in PI, you're not in court all the time. So I had the court experience. I was very comfortable. You were always in all the hearings, were in person in front of a judge. And so I was very comfortable with that part of it, but I I wanted to do more and I didn't know what. And I was kind of just looking at law firms, but I hadn't applied anywhere. And that friend of mine, Doug, who introduced me to Travis, said, I know this lawyer. Why don't you just go talk to him? And I didn't really, honestly, if I'm being completely honest, personal injury was not even something I had considered. It kind of gave me the ick. I was like, no, I don't want my face on a billboard on the Highway 50. I don't want a commercial. Like it's not going to be my thing. Here I am, but there's reason. So I met Travis and he had an office in Cameron Park at the time. And he had basically said, yeah, come up, you can talk to me. He'd been practicing for many, many years at the time. I want to say maybe 20, 25 years when I met him. And he basically said, I'm not hiring. I don't really have a position for anyone, but I know a lot of attorneys. I'm on the board of CCTLA and I can introduce you to some people. This is kind of what we do in our law firm. And he kind of just showed me around and talked to me about personal injury law. And he worked for the insurance companies before, so he kind of knew both sides of things. And we had a lot of conversations. And he basically, I don't remember exactly how it happened, but he basically said, I'm not hiring. I can kind of try to help you because we had a mutual friend, but I'm not hiring, but feel free to like come back and, check in. And I just went back every day and I just showed up every morning and I just made myself a desk and got a computer and started working. And he's kind of like, what is this girl doing? And probably about 6 months later, after just never left him alone, he had asked his office manager, Gina, like, is this girl on our payroll? And she's like, no,
I was
we're
just
not.
going to ask you that. You hired yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I hired myself. So I just didn't let him not hire me. I just showed up every single day and learned personal injury and realized it was so much more than I thought it was. These giant corporations are taking advantage of these people that have had something really tragic in their life happen. And all they really want, most of them, is to be made whole and to feel like they're heard and reasonably compensated. And you pay your insurance every month thinking if something happens to me, I'll be okay because I pay, right? I have this giant monthly bill that I pay or yearly, however you pay it. So if something happens to me and I'm in a bad car accident or I'm injured or someone dies, I'm protected. And that became very clear early on that that's not the case. And there were some cases when I was not hired, but was helping this law firm that I realized, oh my gosh, there's so much more to this. And one of them was a child, which I kind of got to help and I helped the parents. It was the child that was injured. But so I was still kind of helping kids and families and realize, wow, this is not just greedy lawyers with their face on a billboard. There's so much more to this. And so I hired myself. 6 months later, they put me on payroll and I never went away. And I kept doing dependency court for the first 4 years that I worked there. I continued doing dependency court. They allowed me to do that. But it kind of started taking away from, I got busier and busier in the PI world. And ultimately, dependency court was also hard on the heartstrings. So it was okay to take a break and I was getting busier and the firm needed more of my time there instead of, going up to court every week. So that's how I landed in personal injury.
Yeah. So I saw that you went to the Jerry Spence trial college.
I
When when
did.
when did that happen?
Oh gosh, I believe that was 2013, I believe.
I mean, because it's a fantastic opportunity. Unfortunately I never went. But everyone that I know just had great things to say about it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Travis had went to the Jerry Spence Trailers College. And he sort of told me, there's this college, you have to apply. But he made it very clear early on, like, we are trial lawyers. We're not gonna sit behind a desk. We're gonna try cases, or even if, they're tough, they're complex. We're trial lawyers. We're gonna try cases, and you have to be willing to do that because this isn't going to be the right fit. And I was like, I mean, I loved the court part of it. That was the fun part. So, but I had never been in front of a jury. All dependency court cases, there's not, it was just a judge. So that part of it was very intimidating. Oh, wait, I have to talk to a jury. Wait a minute, I don't know how to do that. So he said, I want you to apply to this school, and if you get in, you're going to go. So I was very fortunate that I got in. I know that that application process is picky. And I don't even remember now, but I remember thinking, oh, that's probably a long shot. But I got lucky, and I got in, and it was probably a huge turning point in my career, I think. Just you go out there in Wyoming, Du Bois, Wyoming, in the middle of nowhere. You live on this ranch, and you're not allowed, there is no cell phone service. So there's no computers, there's no cell phones. You can take your phone, and they call it cell phone hill, and you can climb up on this hill and try to get service, and you might get a call in. And I did that, and tried to get calls here and there, but it's really like immersion, right? Like, you're going to live and breathe and sleep this program, and learn to be a trial lawyer. And really, a lot of it was about, telling the human story. And I mean, I can't say enough about it. It was an amazing experience. I made some really great friends there. I learned some really, really amazing things while being there. So yeah, I think anyone that has the opportunity to go, I don't know, the colleges, there's a lot going on there now, but I was very fortunate to go at the time that I did.
Yeah.
How was the program?
How long is it?
How long was it? How long were you
I
there?
believe it was 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I believe
That's a
it
long
was, yes.
program.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I was gone for almost a month, and I don't know if that was just travel on each side, but yeah, it's morning, day, and night. I mean, you start in the morning, and you go all day, and you go all night. And there's all kinds of different things they do there. It's not just, but you're on your feet. You're on your feet, and you're learning how to pick a jury, and you're learning how to um do cross-examination as a young attorney, but you're also learning about you. And a lot of it is about really digging into yourself, and how can you really care about someone else when you don't care about yourself, and like just uncovering your truth, and telling your own story. We did all psychodrama stuff, which when I first showed up, I was like, oh gosh, what is this place? This is bananas. This is not for me. But wow, really learned some stuff about yourself, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean,
Very
it just illustrates the importance of investing in yourself. If you want to be, the best lawyer that you can be, you have to invest. And, I know a lot of people go, well, I'm not going to spend 3 weeks or a month in a place where I can't get self-perception. But as I say, I never went. But it's that kind of investment that I think is super important if you want to be the best lawyer that you can and really represent your clients, as well as possible.
Sure, for sure. It was transitional.
Sounds like you met some lifelong friends.
Yeah, yeah. I'm still in touch with some of the people I went to that college with. I mean, you really create a bond out there when you don't have, you're cut off from your real friends and family, right? And you're show up with a bunch of strangers, and you're living in this dorm, and like, you don't have your cell phone to just escape like we all do in our day-to-day lives. And yeah, you create a bond. And when you do these psychodramas, and it's like group therapy, like you're telling your deepest, darkest secrets, and really, showing yours. And so yeah, you create some crazy bonds with these people. And
That
it,
could
it was
be
really
very
cool.
scary, right? Sharing your deepest, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so Kelsey, when did you transition to, I take it that you and Travis Black became partners at some point. Is that accurate?
Mhm.
So how did
Yeah.
that transition happen? I mean, you show up, you're basically the person who just keeps showing up, and eventually you wind up as his partner. So how did that kind of manifest itself?
Yeah, I was his associate for many years, and I think he always, he got to a point where he wanted to slow down a little bit, but not, give it up. Still very involved. So I want to say it was 2019. There was a lot of discussion leading up to that of what it would look like. He eventually wanted to retire, but wasn't sure that he wanted to semi-retire or retire and what all that looked like. So ultimately in about 2019, I believe it was, he made me a partner. And so that he could just step back a little bit, and I could take on a little bit more um, of the management, I guess, of the firm. But obviously still he would be the main guy, the big boss. So I became a partner then, and then ultimately 2 years ago, he decided that he was going to, I say retire, but he still stayed on of counsel. So I became the owner 2 years ago, and he's stayed on as a consultant. And he loves practicing law, and I think it's a really hard thing for a lot of people to put it down. So he wanted to stay involved in some capacity, and the transition wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for either of us. It was all he had ever known, and it was obviously a scary leap of faith for me to say, you know what, I think I can do this, and I think I can take over this firm, and I'm not going to sink the ship, right? I mean, the transition was, there was a lot of discussions and a lot of sleepless nights, I think, on both of our ends of how this is going to look, and can I keep it going, and can he walk away? And so the best decision I ever made, but scary one
Yeah. And that's
for
not
sure.
dissimilar to ultimately what I did is, after owning a firm for 15 or 17 years, I sold it to somebody, but I've remained of counsel, which um, gives a backstop, right? You have somebody to turn to when, you have questions. Well, what should we do in this situation? Should we take this case? Should we expand this practice area? Or what we're finding now is that we continually are narrowing down our practice areas and taking um, uh, less diversity of cases and really honing in on just a couple of practice areas. Have you guys done that? Try to niche down at all, or do you continue to take anything that's pretty much a falls in the category of personal injury?
No, I would say over the years we've definitely, quality over quantity. We definitely, the threshold is different of what we take. We don't just take any old case. I mean, the reality is I think when you have, there are very large firms that can take any old case that walks through the door and want to.
Mhm.
Uh, that is, that's not my vision. I don't really have, we're a boutique firm, right? We want to, I always say this, and I truly mean it, like I want to recognize my client if I'm standing in the grocery store in Folsom. I I don't want to not know who they are. We do really try to provide a personal touch here. So I think if we've narrowed it down in the way of like, it doesn't necessarily have to do with exactly what the case is, but like who the person is. Is it a good fit? Can we advocate for them in a way that they deserve? And if we have too many cases at that time, maybe it's just not a right fit for us, not because we don't handle that type of case, but because we wouldn't be able to give them the quality that we should.
Sure.
Uh, so we've narrowed it down in that way, where it kind of depends on what we've got going on, um, of when we say, okay, we can't take on that case right now, and this is why. Um, but we do still take a wide range of different types of personal injury cases. It just kind of depends on all of, you know, all of the things going on around it. But we've narrowed our practice in that, where we just don't take anything that calls anymore.
Yeah, I think that that's super important to really monitor your capacity. Can you provide the service? There's so many firms that just take anything that walks through the door, and especially in the PI world where people aren't actually giving you any money, right? You're
Right,
investing in them as opposed to them paying you, right? You're fronting
right,
everything, and
right.
I think it's a mistake. I've worked with a number of firms that, they'll take anything that walks through the door, and boy, it really bites them in the butt when things go sideways on them. And then they scratch
Yeah,
their head. They don't understand why. And I'm like, because you took a
yeah.
case that you shouldn't have, and you didn't have the capacity to take it in any event. So
Oh, yes,
it's an interesting
100%.
component. So how did
Yeah.
COVID, so you basically came in, if I'm understanding it, as a partner right before, the world kind of blew up. How did COVID impact your practice, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, what a crazy time in my life, actually. I was pregnant with my first son at that time as well.
Hmm.
So what a whirlwind. It was the biggest blessing for me because I got to work from home pregnant, right? Like I got to just grow in my leggings and no one knew it. And it was so funny because by the time we kind of started coming back into the office, I had now had this baby and everyone's like, "What? You were pregnant?" Because no one ever saw me. Um, we worked remote and um, I would say it impacted our firm in a way that there was a lot less vehicles on the road, right? And a large amount of our cases are auto accidents. Not all of them, but a big chunk of our cases are auto accidents. So when there's not a lot of cars out on the road, people aren't crashing. So we certainly had a huge dip in our intake calls, our consultations. Like there was a huge dip for a while. And we knew that, how our cases in personal injury law, you said this earlier, but we work on a contingency fee. So we are not paid until we resolve the case. And we take a risk on every case that we bring in that there's a chance you won't get paid at all, or you will not get paid for a few years, depending on, how long the case takes and the level of, what's going on and the complexities of the case. So during COVID, you have this thing where intakes are coming in, but these cases are settling, the ebbs and flows of, contingency work. So it was a scary time, for a while of, okay, we're not having any newcomers. These cases aren't going to settle for a while. And then, oh, by the way, the courtrooms are closed. So you couldn't even have the threat to the insurance company of, oh, whatever, I'm not going to take that offer. We'll see you in court. There was no courtrooms.
Mhm.
So it was very scary initially of, oh, wow, this isn't going to go well. They know that we can't say, fine, we'll let a jury decide. They know we're going to have to take that settlement or wait and see when will we get a courtroom, if ever again. It was so, at that time, so unknown.
Right.
And then when courts started opening back up, it was, criminal has precedent over civil. So even though the courtrooms were opening back up, they had all this backlog of criminal cases. So we still weren't going to get courtrooms. We were going to get kicked and kicked and kicked and kicked. So it was a really scary time for a while. Luckily, we persevered and it all worked out okay. We had cases that carried us through that time, but as far as it impacting our business, it was scary and it definitely did. We definitely had some moments of, oh boy, how's this going to go? But for me in that time in my life, being pregnant and having my first son and being able to work from home, and I had a nanny that came to our house and I had my office set up but I would be able to go out and see my baby whenever I wanted and take a break. I mean, that was the biggest blessing ever because I would have never had that time with him had I not had a COVID baby. But
Did you ever have to do any of the trials where you had your jury all over the courtroom? I did several trials where I had jurors sitting behind me, I had jurors sitting in the back of the courtroom. Everybody had the social distancing thing. It was a nightmare, actually, I thought. Did you ever do any of those trials?
So actually, no, I mean, we did a ton of depositions and mediations and all kinds of things by Zoom, obviously, and still do because that hasn't completely went away. But um, I kind of lucked out because we had a trial that was going to be by Zoom. And I was kind of like, how's this going to go? This is not, how are you going to really connect with a jury through a screen? And I had seen a colleague of mine do it and I had been on there just to kind of see how it went. And it went okay. But I just felt like, gosh, the human connection, there is something really about having a screen between you, right? There just is. But luckily we did my first trial post-COVID um, was in person. And they still had the social distancing, but it was in the courtroom. So people had to sit apart
Mhm.
and they had all the rules. And like, I think someone that started coughing, they immediately had all the jurors put on masks and stuff like that. But I thought, oh, we're going to go in here. How am I going to talk with a mask to a jury? But they didn't have us do it. I think they left it up to the jurors' discretion, if I remember. And then ultimately, when someone started coughing, they all had to mask up and they all had to sit, far apart. So it was very interesting, but
Right.
I didn't have to do the trial by Zoom. It was still in person, but it was definitely different. It was definitely like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
wait, we're
I,
not
I
allowed to
didn't
get over
I
there.
didn't like the fact that I couldn't see all the jurors. So, typically, right, you have 12 jurors in the box and maybe a couple alternates, and they're right there and you can watch them. But I had literally, although they were in person, we were all in the same room, they were behind me. And so I couldn't
Yeah.
see what they were doing. And there was also a problem that I ran into that they were watching my computer screen. And I didn't really have any way I mean, I did all kinds of things to try to avoid that. But yeah, it was,
Yeah.
it was, and as you say, that it was really hard to connect with jurors. When I was doing jury selection, I just didn't feel like I knew anything about these people because they had masks on. Um, yeah, I thought it was a very difficult time, and we were doing criminal defense, and so, as you say, we were still in court, we were still doing trials, but it was not and that was true. I did multiple counties, many different counties, and they were all having the same problem. So.
So,
Yeah.
Kelsey, where are you finding your cases today?
Where am I finding them?
Yeah, where are your cases coming from? How are you doing any marketing? Are you working with other attorneys where you're getting referrals of cases? How's the practice
Yeah, it's
going?
kind of a mixed bag. We don't do a ton of advertising. We have some social media fun, we have some connection on social media that we do. We have a website and someone that monitors that, where we do get some people that read our reviews, our Google reviews and our Yelp reviews, and call us. There's not a ton of personal injury attorneys in Folsom. I mean, there's a ton of personal injury attorneys in the Sacramento area and in California. I mean, they're on every block, but in Folsom, there's not a ton. So we do have a little bit of a niche here in the community. I'm pretty involved in the Chamber of Commerce here in Folsom, so I'm connected with a large part of the community in that way. And we get cases there. We get a lot of, they're not return clients, but like, oh, my mom used you or my brother used you. We get a lot of that because we've been, Travis was practicing in this area for, I want to say almost 30 years. And, now I've been here about 13 or so. So we get a lot of that. Um, we ran a little bit of like some stuff on a streaming network a while back. I think we got a case or two off that, but we don't do a lot of it's word of mouth. Yeah, a lot of it's word of mouth. And I think people reading Google and Yelp that are looking for a local Folsom, we really try to pride ourselves on we're your local because there's LA firms all over up here that represent, they pretend they're up here, but they're not. And they have a ton of advertising. We just can't compete with that. And nor do I really have a desire to. Obviously, you have to get your name and face out there some way, but so far we haven't had to do a lot. It's been good.
Have any associates in the office, or is it just you?
It's just me. I hope to have an associate in the next year or so, but I have amazing support staff and people that have been doing this a really long time. We have prior claims adjusters that work here, so they understand the insurance side. We have a paralegal that's been doing this for 27 years. I mean, she could do it with her eyes closed. So I couldn't do it without the team. We have an amazing support staff.
And does your staff work in the office, or are they working remotely, or some hybrid of those two things?
Yeah, a hybrid. We have there's two people that always that don't work remote days at all. And then some work a few. It kind of depends. We're actually kind of transitioning right now. We've slowly been making the transition back to fully here. But I know the benefits of remote work. So it's a struggle, you know, as a prior employee and the owner, there's a struggle there of you know, some people work really, really great from home and some people don't. And I think there's benefits to both for sure. So it's a difficult transition. We're kind of
I know I
navigating.
was, you know, I guess you could say old school. I was really challenged by the idea of people working remotely. Um, and I think you're right. I think some people do really well on that. I know I don't.
Yeah,
I needed to be in my office. Unfortunately, uh, my office was like a 10-minute walk from my house. So that wasn't
right.
such a big deal. But yeah, it makes it's a challenge. It's a challenge. And what I found, and we're still finding, the newer crop of legal staff and lawyers and whatever, I mean, they expect to work remotely. And especially the younger ones, I have a real challenge with it because then I don't think they get the training. You know, they don't get to
Yeah,
see the sausage being made, right?
yeah,
And it is different. It is different when it's actually being done as opposed to what you think it's going to be like.
yeah. There is really something for me, you know, there's something to be said about being able to just walk down the hallway and say, hey, what about this? Instead of sending the email. Or there's something about the connection, especially if there's like a bigger case coming up or a trial coming up where and I know attorneys that do everything remote and they swear by it and it works for them and they're great lawyers and they have great teams and somehow it works for them.
Mhm.
Um, it doesn't completely for me. I like the connection. I like the interaction. I don't want to send an email about that thought I had and then wait 45 minutes for the response and maybe I'm on to the next thing, you know. There's something about the connection that I really, really appreciate being in an office still. So I know everyone feels differently about it. It's hot topic, I think, but I like being in the office.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Kelsey, any challenges that you're dealing with, or you foresee in the practice, maintaining the practice, growing the practice? Um, any what is, I guess, what's your long-term plan for the practice?
Yeah, I think challenges, you know, I think I touched on this briefly. There are so many personal injury attorneys and giant corporations that are advertising in our general area that I think will pose challenges to all small law firms, to the boutique law firms that, you know, I think I stated this earlier. I have no desire to be a giant law firm and you just a number. That is not a goal of mine. I'd like to grow a little. I don't want to grow a lot because I want to recognize my client. I want to have a personal relationship. I want to have that touch. I think that that's what makes me feel connected to my clients, makes me want to fight harder. And So growing, yes, you want to stabilize, you want to grow. Consistency is the goal of, not having the ebbs and flows be so dramatic. But when there is giant corporations spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to be in front of everyone's face, why would they choose me? How are they going to find me? Because, their commercials every 4 seconds and the billboards and the, buses and the benches and everywhere else have someone else's name on them. So that is a challenge that I think many of us small firms are faced with and are going to face. And then AI, that's a word everyone cringes when they hear it. But honestly, I think if you use AI, it's not going away. It's here to stay. You have to use it. You have to get behind it. But if you use it in the right ways, I don't think it should be replacing jobs. It should be making jobs easier and more efficient, So AI, I think, is seen as a challenge, but also such a benefit too. But yeah, I think AI is going to take away certain jobs, and it's always a little bit of the unknown that you're like, oh, where's this going to go? Is personal injury going to be completely gone in 10 years? Is, everyone just going to put in their diagnosis codes to a computer that's going to generate a resolution and send the person a check? We will see.
You know, I mean, yeah, AI is going to change some things, but the computer did too. I mean, when I first started practicing, and I'll age myself, but we didn't have computers. I mean, they had a word processor that was really lousy. So we had secretaries, and you would either handwrite out or dictate, and then they would type up your letter on a Selectric, and then you would edit it. Um, the computer, kind of took care of that job, right? We type our own
Yeah.
stuff now. You can talk into your machine and it will print it all out. Um, it's just a tool. And I
Yeah.
think this hysteria of, oh, we're not going to need lawyers anymore. I think it's totally overblown. And I really believe that clients want the personal touch. They want to talk to a human being. I mean, how many times have you called a phone tree, right? And all you want to do is talk to somebody who can solve your problem, and you just
Yeah.
keep getting, push one if, I hate
Yeah.
it. So I
Yeah.
really think that the firms that like you who want to have the personal touch, who want to know your client, who want to understand what's really going on and to serve them best are going to do fine because as long as you continue to provide that personal touch. And the big mega firms that want to do everything by computer, um, yeah, I think that they're going to really struggle. I think people are going to be really unhappy with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it can be a real blessing if you can't run from it. You got to use it. You got to learn it. It's really going to be a tool that hopefully helps um, a small firm, especially, be more efficient. So I think, yeah, there's many challenges I can think of. You just got to kind of roll with the punches and and just keep believing that you're in the right spot and is what I'm supposed to be doing, and hope that it keeps going.
Great. Well, we've got to wrap this up because we're bumping up against our time. Um, if Kelsey, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, had a case, or just wanted to, touch bases with you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Calling our office, obviously we have an online submission on our website, which is bdlawteam.com, but calling our office, 916-962-2896. We are one of the few attorney's offices, I think, locally. I will actually talk to you. If you call and ask to speak to the attorney, you're not just going to get any old person. I would like to talk to you. So yeah, just call in the office and asking to speak to an attorney. And, we have free consultations. So we'd like to hear what you're going through and see if it's something we can help you with or find someone that can.
Great.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you today, Kelsey.
You too. Thank you both for having me. And I hope it's not too windy for a bike ride later. And Leonard, it's going to be a beautiful day for you to get out there. Here.
Sunrise in the early bird, rock me to my